Arkansas, Mr. Hill is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hinneman, I was interested in talking about, for a minute, the IAEA annexes to the agreement. Secretary Kerry really was quite dismissive of those in the briefing of Congress earlier this afternoon. What amount of importance should we put on the Iranian document with IAEA in terms of studying that as a part of fully understanding the verification regime, inspection regime?
I think it's one of the most important activities. I have been dealing with Iran 12 years in a row. And one of the most difficult things were to get things written down on the paper. What was not written, what was not specified, was allowed. So therefore, I think that all these documents should be available for IAEA member states. I don't see any technical reason why those should be secret information from the member states of the IAEA. IAEA Secretariat can perhaps give some of those information in technical briefings, but again, I think that the transparency of the process requires those to be disclosed so that we can see what kind of confidence level we have for this verification regime which is foreseen. And as I said in my statement earlier today, I think at the time from mid-August to mid-December is much too short to solve this PMD problem. And then I also pointed out that this IAEA is looking only information which is in the annex of November 2011 report. But Mr. Amano itself has said that there is some other information which came afterwards. And the way I read this JCPOA doesn't really give this opportunity to IAEA to go to verify at this stage that other information. Plus that knowing from my own experience from earlier years is that the IAEA puts the reports only information which it is sure at that point of time and information which meets its standards for the veracity of the information. So I'm sure that there were also some pieces which for those reasons Mr. Amano decided not to include to this program. So therefore I see that it's essential that the governments and the legislative parts will see those details so that they can do a full assessment what we can achieve, what we can not achieve, because after all, these are the elements of your risk assessment.
Right, and I feel like Secretary Kerry, as I said, Mr. Chairman, was dismissive, and I hope that you'll speak with Chairman Royce about making sure that we see these annexes and know the detail of the verification regime. A question for Mr. Berman. You were talking about the GDP in your written testimony and potential amounts of money that are being released. Give me some feel for the flow in addition to any near frozen money that's released, but what kind of monthly flow you think their revenue would be. And also tell me what you think the actual amount of foreign reserve should be for their belt and suspenders approach of having adequate cash on hand were snapback sanctions to come back. How much money would you estimate? 10% of GDP? More? What would you say?
I think that's a good question, and sort of it comes down to a sort of a term of art calculus. I think the numbers that we heard earlier from other members of the committee of the task force when we talked about repatriation of sanctions or frozen funds that have already been released in the context of $12 billion to date. I think that's a useful barometer to look at. When we look at the sum of money that is expected to be provided.
So how much would you say would be in foreign, to be held in reserves? 10% of GDP? Would that give them that kind of a surety that they would, or would it be?
I think that's a reasonable estimate. My colleagues might disagree, might have a different estimate.
Well, just to give you a sense of this, in 2012, 2013, Iran's fully accessible foreign exchange reserves were $20 billion, an economy of about $350 billion GDP. And that's why they were 4 to 6 months from a severe balance of payments crisis. At the point where we could have actually accelerated the sanctions and brought them to severe crisis, we let up. We gave them $12 billion, which took their foreign exchange reserves, increased it by 60% to $32 billion, Now we're going to give them at least $100 billion. Now their foreign exchange reserves are going to get to $132 billion. And they're effectively gone from 6% of their GDP to almost about 40% of their GDP. So that what we've done is we've built up their foreign exchange reserves, which now increases their economic resilience. And with that kind of foreign exchange reserve rainy day fund, over time, it's going to make it very difficult for us to snap back sanctions and create the kind of economic pain in time. And Dr. Heinen is right. When they're industrial size near zero breakout, days away from actually breaking out to a nuclear weapon, our ability to actually impose that kind of economic coercive force at that time will be significantly diminished because it will take much longer to have any kind of impact, never mind the impact we had in 2012.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
So, might I add one additional factoid just to sort of to round out the discussion? I think it's useful to point out when we were having the earlier discussion about the amount of constriction that has occurred with regard to the Iranian economy as a result of sanctions, we heard about a fifth with regard to the constriction of Iranian GDP. If these numbers are anywhere near accurate, if we are indeed looking at $100 billion to $150 billion, we are actually providing or facilitating the expansion of the Iranian economy by a significant portion. We are wiping clean the constriction that occurred as a result of sanctions, and we're actually forcing an expansion. And I think that should be noted because, as I said before, money is fungible, and this expanded revenue is likely to trickle in various ways to Iranian regional activities as well as to terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. We'll now proceed